and join us as we go live to New York City with our correspondent in the United States, Jorge Gestoso, who is joined by a very special guest, Ralph Gonsalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Let's see.
Thank you. We are at the United Nations, and we have the honor to have with us the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Mr. Ralph Gonsalves. Mr. Gonsalves, a warm welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Gonsalves, your statement that you are going to be saying at this time at the General Assembly.
Well, there are several issues which we have to highlight. First of all, we have to set the backdrop, the context of the difficult period in which we are going through, difficult condition in the world, awash with a lot of contradictions. There are pushes in one direction where we are leading to more and more conflict, disruptions of trade with the tariffs, great uncertainty, alliances are being cast aside. That's taking place, while at the same time there is hope for a lot of people that we can have a better world. So there are these two contrasting positions in the world. Of course, the one which is ascendant at the moment is the one of confusion and difficulties and challenges of all kinds in the political economy, in the competition between major countries across the world, and of course issues of climate change and artificial intelligence and sustainable development, the uneven development in the world. That's as context, background, all of that very important, and each of those elements critical. And then there are particular issues which we must highlight. Certainly, top of the list has to be the genocide which is taking place before our very eyes on television in Gaza and the West Bank. The continued problems between the United States and Cuba, and the blockade, and the tightening of the screws, so to speak, by the Americans in relation to the trade embargo and other activities concerning Cuba. And then there's Venezuela and the parade of the U.S. military in the seas around Venezuela, and upsetting the sacrosanct principle of the Caribbean being a zone of peace, Latin America being a zone of peace. And then there is Haiti, which is an ongoing problem. And even though the United Nations Security Council is seized of it, you have not the extent of the resources being put to it, and certainly the political will is not there to have a solution. And of course there is Ukraine. There are several things that are taking place in Africa, the conflict. So it's a real complicated, difficult world which we are facing amidst hope among 8 billion people in the world. 1/8 of the world's population doing pretty well, and the rest not doing so well. And the differences between both, and the different responses of both, and realignments are taking place. Complicated, difficult, putting a lot of pressure on leaders and countries, peoples, as to how we have to get through this particular challenging times.
Your country is placed in the Caribbean. You are neighbor of the Caribbean other countries, and you are having an army of the U.S., quote unquote, displaced or displayed over the Caribbean thousands of American Marines and even a nuclear submarine and so on and so forth. How the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines feels to have that sort of display so close?
We don't like it. The people in the Caribbean don't like it. The overwhelming majority of people in Latin America don't like it. We have had statements from individual governments, we have had from CARICOM, we have had from CELAC, Community of States of Latin America and the Caribbean. Because I want to re-emphasize, Latin American governments and Caribbean governments have repeatedly affirmed and reaffirmed that Latin America and the Caribbean, we are a zone of peace. By all means, we have to work together to tackle transnational crime, and especially the trade in narcotics, in cocaine and fentanyl and the like. But you don't need this kind of excessive militarization to achieve that. In fact, the excessive militarization clearly complicating the matters. So there must be some other geopolitical considerations beyond the question of fighting traffickers in drugs.
You have been a key player in the integration sort of movements. So we're talking about CARICOM, CELAC,
Yes.
We're talking about BRICS. How do you see, for example, BRICS playing a role in the world?
The role that BRICS is playing is still uncertain, because BRICS has to have a clear definition as to what it is for, as distinct from what it is against. BRICS doesn't like a unipolar world. And there are competing power centers developing. But BRICS is not cohesive. And anytime that BRICS would meet, clearly the elephant not in the room is the United States of America. So that's one issue at the broad political level. In economic terms, BRICS and other countries in the world don't like the weaponizing of the dollar and the payment system. So that BRICS looking towards having an alternative currency and payment systems in which people should trade. But yet, substantially still, 65, 70% or more of the trade is still conducted in US dollars, even though we have seen agreements between, say, Saudi Arabia and China in respect of oil. We have seen arrangements between China and India and Russia in rubles. We have seen different currencies come into play. South Africa has entered that picture too. But yet, even though there's the building of powers, possible alternative power center, the US is still the dominant force, even though you're beginning to see the cracks. Part of the challenge, which I believe faces President Trump, is this. He's saying that the United States of America is disadvantaged by forces, some of them dark forces, as he would see it. And that in this condition of being disadvantaged, what is the solution? Not cooperation he's advancing to improve an advantage. He's using the existing strength of the US economy, the US military, its scientific and cultural dominance, its control over the mass means of communication globally, including increasingly AI. In other words, it says that it's lost power, but it's using its considerable advantage in power or with power to strengthen its condition of advantage while proclaiming that it's disadvantaged.
Contradiction.
So that is an issue there. And this is not only one in relation to countries which are looking to challenge in competitive terms U.S. power, even among allies, because we see the battles is having with Europe. So there is great uncertainty in all of this. And I think President Trump, being an intelligent man, will see those contradictions, and he will probably say, well, it's through that contradictory process that I'm going to reassert U.S. dominance. Maybe.
Your country, if there is a country that has suffered from climate change, is yours.
Yes.
St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Very much so.
And we have heard Mr. Trump saying that it's a con job.
It's a hoax. No, I don't agree with him on that.
Tell me how much is affecting climate change your country, and what is your vision about how we should tackle climate change?
I've been in office since March 2001, almost 25 years. And in this 24 years plus, we have had 12 major weather-related events. We have had a series of volcanic eruptions in April 2021. The last major hurricane was on last year, July the 1st, which caused loss of life and damage and loss, amounting to 1/3 of our GDP, of our gross domestic product. Now that's one big blow. You had nearly 20% of the housing stock either completely destroyed or severely damaged. Now, that's big. That's huge in any country, and we have to be rebuilding stronger and better. The problems of sea defenses and river defenses, and so on and so forth. So we see the real impact of climate change, and the science is there. The earth is getting warmer. We have to keep the temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. We have gone beyond that now already. And by 2050, it would be a number getting close to 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Now, that is bringing about real chaos in the world. So I think on that particular issue, I think President Trump is not as well advised as I think he should be. He's a man who has made a lot of money. He's a businessman. He deals with facts. I don't see how he can say, in the face of all the science, and there's now a complete consensus on this, about global warming and the deleterious effect of climate change. He's wrong on that.
So finally, when you are going to be leaving and hitting home this time, what is the message that you are going to remember that you got with you from this 80th General Assembly?
Well, it is important, amidst all the toing and froing, there has to be a clear recognition that the major challenges in the world cannot be dealt with unilaterally. We have to deal with them together. You know, I've been quoting Marcus Mosiah Garvey, national hero of Jamaica, leader of the largest movement for black people in the diaspora ever, in the 1920s. He said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And you will find that when you go far together, you will go faster than if you go alone. I think there's a lot of wisdom there. We can't tackle climate change without multilateralism, working together and cooperating. We can't do that with just climate financing or financing for development or artificial intelligence or dealing with the sustainable development goals, nuclear weapons, and all the major conflicts and wars. We can't tackle these things unless we work together. This earth, though we have 8 billion people, is still a small integrated planet. And what happens in one part of it affects the other. So I think this is an important message, and that we have to get our American friends to grasp this, to understand this. And I think it's a mistake they're making in thinking that unilateral action can redress the power balance decidedly for them, and at the same time for they themselves to have their view of the world being the only view. That's not going to happen. That's not how human beings function. The United States of America is still the major power in the world, economically, militarily, culture, technology. No other country is close to it, even though China is closing the gap. But China has its own challenges. We haven't spoken about those. Its population, the slowing down of its economy, the unevenness internally in development in China, because China has very modern areas and then still has a lot of backwardness. So it's a complicated situation even there internally, and it has its own set of baggage from history. And I'm not ill-speaking anybody here. I'm just having an honest conversation with an honest journalist about problems in the world. And we ourselves, as small countries, we have to bring this honesty to the table so that competing powers can hear some truth which they may not hear in their own echo chambers.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
We had the pleasure to interview Mr. Ralph Gonsalves, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the United Nations that are celebrating the 80th General Assembly. We get back to you now.
We were live to New York City as our correspondent in the United States, Jorge Gestoso, interviewed Ralph Gonsalves, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in the framework of the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly underway with its second day of general debates. This is all for the moment, but stay tuned with teleSUR English for more.